This is John McElroy and Gary Vasilash with Autoline After Hours, episode 585 for January 20th of 2022. How GM developed the electric Chevrolet Silverado in record time. Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey.
Hey, Gary.
John, how are you?
Doing well. Doing
Good.
well. Can't wait to
Good.
get into the show. This is going to be good.
This will be a very good one. All right. So today in history, I was going to ask you this. I'm not going to ask you this. I was going to say in 1894, a German company named Hildebrand and Wolfmuller received a patent for the world's first production blank. I'm not going to let you guess on that one because it's just too damn difficult.
Yeah, thank you.
It was actually the world's first production motorcycle, but we'll leave that one alone.
Yeah, I would have never got it.
The company made 2,000 of them and went out of business in 1919. So I'm going to revert, but I'm going to revert back to Dr. Data.
Uh-oh.
Okay. So in 2021, in the Japan market, the Toyota Group had 47% of the market.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Which company was number two?
Very tricky question, I think, because that includes the K cars. And nonetheless, I'm going to say Honda was number two.
Very close, but no proverbial cigar. It was Suzuki.
See, and that comes back to the K cars because they dominate that segment.
So Suzuki had 14% of the market. Honda came in third with 13% of the market.
Yikes. So Nissan was with the perennial number two in Japan is not in the top three.
It's now the number fourth with 12%, then Mazda at 4% and Subaru at 2%.
Wow.
Imports represent 6%. And Toyota actually, for the first time in its history, had the top four selling vehicles. The Rumi, have you ever seen a picture of the Toyota Rumi?
No, it sounds like a dinky little car, though.
Well, it's like a little minivan that apparently, it reminds me of a Scion XB that was smashed into some bizarro world minivan.
So that must be a K car.
I think it's bigger than a K car.
Okay.
And then the number two is the Yaris Cross. Of course, you have to have a crossover type version of the Yaris. The Yaris, and then the Alphard. It's top four vehicles. But enough of that.
Yes.
Let's go to the show.
Yes. Let's bring in Joann Muller from Axios. Hello, Joann.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Good.
Good to see you.
You too.
Good to have you back. I love the blue background.
Well, I changed venues. I'm now in my daughter's bedroom.
And
and
Joann doing this virtually.
Yeah.
And Joann is with the Axios What's Next newsletter. So for everybody, go to Axios and subscribe to that. It's comes out every day, and it's really, really an interesting read. Lots of things going on in there.
Yeah, not just transportation. We're looking at basically what's around the corner in the next 2 to 5 years. But a big part of it is transportation for sure. And EVs, AVs, all that.
Good deal. Hey, let's bring in our special guest today, Nichole Kraatz, Chief Engineer on the Silverado EV. Nichole, so awesome to have you on the show with us today.
Thanks. I'm so excited to be here. Glad to talk to you guys.
You know, we got a million questions to ask you, but I'll kick it off by saying this. You guys are claiming that you developed that EV in 24 months. Now, that's 2 years. That might sound normal to most people not in the industry. To anybody in the industry, it's like, yowza, that is really fast. I think Mark Royce is claiming that that's half the time it used to take GM to do this. Now, I know there's platform sharing and all that with the new Ultium architecture, but nonetheless, what was key to getting this truck done so quickly?
Our team has had to pivot and learn how to collaborate differently, especially with COVID. So when you look at some of the other programs that we've had that have developed off the LTM architecture, like the Hummer EV, we learned to collaborate differently. We learned to work together in smaller groups, have less decision making across broader areas, and really have each person in the team focused on their area and look at a customer viewpoint of, if with an EV architecture, you have all new opportunities to improve storage, cargo flexibility, the chassis, the body structure itself. And so each person was focused in their area. And really my job was to take constraints off of them to enable them to get their designs in and do what they wanted to do in each of their areas. And it created a really great integrated truck. And we all learned to just basically look at each other and say, what must be true to make this happen? Let's go work on how to make it happen, and then go develop what the constraints need to be from there. And it was really a great job by all involved to really just innovate how we do our work, how we do our engineering, how we do the design. Of course, we have to also bring in math tools and other capabilities of technology in the industry as well to go and develop a product that quickly.
So it sounds like you decentralized the process, gave people more freedom just to do their own thing, as it were.
You know, people know their stuff. I mean, that's the reality. So we put a sort of a vision in place that we wanted a pickup truck that was going to offer 400 miles of range. We put a vision on the board that said we wanted cargo flexible, cargo carrying capability that was flexible and allowed people to do many things with the pickup truck. And with those two things as our vision, understanding that also this had the Silverado nameplate with it. So it has to meet the quality, durability, capability that our Silverado customers have come to expect. Those were the three basic pillars. From there, each person had their own opportunity to design the truck that they felt was the best design. And it really did create a great opportunity for our engineering and design organizations.
Joann.
Yeah, you know, I love this idea. First of all, I think there were hopefully fewer meetings for everybody.
Definitely.
but you know, the idea of designing a vehicle, as important as this one, but any vehicle during the pandemic in your home, it's just something that I don't think people can really imagine. So, you know, can you talk a little bit more about kind of what that was like? You know, were people bringing home pieces of it to work on in their living room or their garage, or what?
We walked out the door with several design stations and monitors, with to the I think dismay a little bit of our security team the day that we closed our offices. You know, it's interesting because there are some things that needed to be done in the office with clay. And then there are a lot of things that we can do virtually with math tools and with collaboration, just in general with small teams. We have a table, literally a table, a giant old drafting table, wood table from, I don't know, before I was born, right? Probably 50s or 60s that the teams used to use for drafting and drawing. We put those tables in a conference area, and that's how we used to work. So we weren't separated by cubicles and other things. We had to recreate that virtually by creating sort of a go-to place that if you needed to catch someone, you didn't have to set up a meeting, find it on their calendar. We made ourselves available. So we really had to rethink the way that team collaboration worked. At the same time, people had pets, friends, siblings, children, you know, spouses and partners that they also had work at home. Kids were doing virtual schooling. And so we also had to pivot to making sure that, you know, if a child came up to you, and I gave this example one day to someone that there was a young lady who had a 2-year-old who was learning to potty train. And she came up in the middle of one of our calls and she's like, "Mommy, I went on the potty." And you know, mom was like, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?" And we said, "Oh, congratulations." The whole room clapped. You could see on the teams that everybody was clapping. And she didn't have to say, you know, I'll talk to you later, honey, and you know, push her aside. She was able to celebrate that moment with her. So there was a ton of pivoting work that had to still be done, very serious and, you know, focused work, kind of to John's comment earlier about how quickly we were doing, but we had to recognize the situation and deal with it. And so the team did an amazing job. We worked in much smaller groups with a lot more authority to just make the design right do the right thing for the customer, and we came out with an amazing product.
So let me pivot here a little bit to the product itself.
Sure.
And so, Nichole, it's called the Silverado, but my understanding is that it is a completely new vehicle, that you didn't carry over anything. Okay. So, the thing that I think about when I think about a full-size pickup truck like a Silverado, I think of a body on frame. Is this a body on frame, or what is, I mean, you talk about the Ultium platform. I guess I just don't understand how this works in this truck.
Yeah, I mean, we've basically recreated a new category of pickup truck, is the best I can describe it. It's not a unibody architecture, because in a unibody, your structure comes from the floor of the body as well as the rest of the body structure. And it's not a body on frame, because the frame is separated by body mounts and there's frame rails and things like that. So what we've really done is we've designed the Ultium architecture battery pack to become part of the structure of the vehicle. The rest of the structure of the vehicle is built into the design of the body, and then those two pieces are integrated together. And so it's a really awesome opportunity to create a new category of vehicle, and it's really fun to talk to a lot of the writers and engineers about, debating back and forth what we should call it, what really is it. It's just it's a great opportunity for a pickup truck, first of all, because the center of gravity gets low. The body structural feel is amazing. It's much improved over traditional body on frame trucks. You don't have the separated cab from the pickup bed. And so it offers pickup customers such a more refined feel, and so much more when we start talking about 400 miles of range and everything else that goes into the performance.
Nichole, are EVs easier to develop? And I ask from this standpoint, clear, you don't have to do altitude calibration. You don't have to do temperature calibration, all those kinds of things. Of course, you have other issues that you have to deal with, but, basic question, is it easier to do an EV?
I don't know that it's easier to do an EV. I'm sure my propulsion peers will have some words for me later if they're listening to the broadcast. I'll say that the scale and flexibility of having a common 24 module battery pack, having a couple drive units developed that are capable of working across vehicles, certainly improves the opportunity for how much new testing, new calibrations are needed. The weights of the vehicles and the throttle responses are not as overly calibrated, I'll just say, as intensely as they are probably in an ICE vehicle. But, everything going into a vehicle is difficult to engineer. Everyone sort of starts to compare each individual piece of a vehicle to another competitor. And if we could create, a vehicle that in each individual category beats another, the integration of that vehicle might not even come out to be something. It'll be like a spaceship by the time you're done with it. So I wouldn't say it's any easier than ICE. I think it's very different. You have a lot more electronics on board. You have the battery technology. I mean, the cells themselves, there's a lot of folks at GM right now that are working with our supply base trying to improve the battery efficiency, the battery capabilities. And so it's not easier, it's different. And it's exciting to be in a huge area of technological innovation and making sure that our customers are still getting reliable product at the end of the day.
And just to follow up on Gary's point, I mean, this is a clean sheet design. You guys didn't use carryover parts, and usually carryover parts save you time and money, but you guys were able to do totally clean sheet and do it a whole lot faster than you've ever done any other vehicle.
I mean, we have a lot of experience in our engineering and design organizations. We're working with suppliers that we have a lot of expertise with. And so, we have a good grasp of brake systems, chassis systems, body structure. We're using a lot more tools analytically and computer-aided analysis now, because we've been able to validate those models and that capability with vehicles that we've already designed and developed parts for. So there are a lot of opportunities to go fast. There is still vehicle testing that needs to be done. There is still performance that we want to make sure meets our customers' desires. But being able to develop a vehicle all new from the ground up allows us to do things for our customers that have never been done before. We can create 7 gallons of storage in the center console and great interior spaciousness because we don't have constraints of carrying over any of the other designs. And so the right thing to do for our customers when we talk about bringing a Silverado and putting EV at the end of it is showing, again, that the concept is the Silverado is a great truck. It's got a lot of capability, performance, and quality that customers have come to know and that new customers coming into this space should absolutely enjoy. But at the same time, why not have something improved like the cargo when you have a flat floor? When you don't have a separation between the cab and the truck bed from a body on frame truck, we can do this awesome midgate. And now we've given the flexibility for cargo an even bigger chance, even bigger step forward for our customers. And it just makes it exciting. It makes it a great opportunity for new customers coming into the space. And we're so proud of the design that we've come forward with.
Joann.
Well, Nichole, I wanted to ask you about the timing of your launch. You have both a work truck and a like super expensive fancy one with all the bells and whistles. And I find it super interesting that you're coming out with the work truck first. I wonder if you could talk about that decision, how much time there is between how long these work trucks will be in the market and when the sort of the consumer version lands, and why you made that decision.
The decision to launch the work truck first is really because of the goal for sustainability in the future. We really wanted to provide our fleet customers with the growth that they're looking for. And that's an area of the market that's ever present and ever growing, especially with the ESG requests that are coming from their partnerships as well. So it makes sense to launch the work truck first. We want to, really look at growing the sustainability of EVs and growing our space in the EV market. And at the same time, the two trucks are co-developed very similarly from a timeline perspective. We're sharing a lot of componentry between those two trucks so that we can provide the fleet durability that our fleet customers have come to know, as well as our retail customers. And so it's really a tip of our hat to our fleet customers to say how much we value their business and we value their vision of sustainability in the future. And then, of course, with the RST launching, we want to show our customers all of the great things that we've been able to design and engineer into the truck. So that first edition truck that was offered for I think it was fall of 2023, that truck is fully loaded. It's got every bell and whistle, technology, capability, 24-inch wheels and tires, off-board charging, 10.2 kilowatts. Everything that we could think of is in that truck. And of course, we know that everyone may not want all of those bells and whistles. So there are still reservations available where someone can go into Chevrolet.com and reserve their vehicle that they can spec in the future. And the work truck is a retail offering. It's going to be able to be purchased as well as other versions of, an RST. You also heard Mary at CES announce that the Trail Boss is in our future. So we understand the lineup of Silverado itself, wanting to go into a broader base customer. Some folks, want different things in their vehicles, and we're going to offer that capability to them. But I think it's really important to us to show the world what an EV can be capable of. We're getting 400 miles of range plus all of this other opportunity and cargo flexibility and an offboard power. You can choose what you want to do with your battery. You can drive 400 miles, or you can drive a couple hundred miles and charge your job site or work site. So I think it's a great opportunity. I think it's a great strategy. It's definitely different, but I don't think different is bad. I think different is good in this case.
Well, if I can follow up to that, I think I take your point that fleets are under a lot of pressure to lower the cost of their business and to satisfy their own carbon energy and energy goals, right? So the demand is definitely there for electric fleets. I think on the consumer side, there's still sort of some questions like, oh, do I really want an electric truck? I don't know. It almost seems like you're putting the work truck out there to sort of establish the market. And the rest of the world will say, oh, wow, look at that. These trucks can do something. Am I reading that right?
I don't know that we set out for that. I'll say to you that I did make a comment earlier to some other folks that I was speaking to that certainly helps. I mean, the bottom line is that going and making a move for an ICE customer into an EV, range anxiety is number one, and then just, can it be reliable? Can I really do this? Can I go find a charging station? The infrastructure needs to grow. So I think certainly having fleet trucks out in the market, people can see them as a consumer energy or a electric company, I should probably say to be legal, but electric company using these vehicles, or a construction company going to its work site and showing that it's capable of doing all the things that they want, certainly helps a customer who's on the fence. The other thing, though, is that we've offered 400 miles of range. I mean, in this market, that's amazing. So anyone who has any concerns about, is 300 miles enough? Is 250 miles enough? Do I know where the next charging station is? That anxiety is much lower with a Silverado EV in their hands. So we've done everything that we can to sort of reduce that anxiety, show the world and show potential customers what a Silverado EV would do for them. And then we've improved the ride and handling, the steering radius, all of the things that go into the vehicle, just even the cargo carrying capability itself, so that we're reducing any reason for not purchasing, to the point that, hey, it's a no excuses truck. It's ready for you. Come on and try it out.
So basically what you're doing is you're getting street cred with the commercial applications, and then the rest will follow. Okay. You were talking about capability. So I want to ask you this question. We all know how this works with normal ICE trucks, and I want you to explain how this happens with your truck. So if someone buys the RST, they can get up to 664 horsepower. If they buy a WT, they get 510 horsepower. Now, in the normal world, you just put a big honking V8 and you get the more horsepower. How do you guys do that?
The 664 horsepower is delivered through our wide open watts mode. And that is a feature for our RST product, very much in tune with its more urban feel, fast vehicle, 0 to 60 in under 4.5 seconds. And that's where that power is coming from. In terms of the work truck, we are going to develop the work truck to be fully capable of 8,000 pounds towing. There'll be other options in the future. We did announce that we have a 20,000 pound towing truck. So there's going to be no lack of power and torque capability in the work trucks. And let's face it, I mean, these numbers, these power and torque numbers that we're talking about are huge relative to the ICE vehicles anyway. So I think that the capability of the work truck is where it needs to be. And then we've reserved some extra nuggets of performance for the RST customers.
So you don't put in bigger motors for one to the other?
Same motors, yep.
Same motors.
Yep.
Nichole, take us through the two different trucks. Talk about the work truck, when it's going to come out. You already mentioned the range, 400 miles. Tell us some more about the features of it. And then, differentiate that with the RST, when that's coming out and how much more it's going to have.
So the work truck is one of our loaded vehicles as well. And that's something that's important as well when we talk about the work truck. We went out and talked to our fleet customers, and they told us that 400 miles of range was important. They also told us that they wanted the capability of off-porting the 10.2 kilowatts of power. So when you talk about the option content of even the work truck, it's fairly highly loaded. It's got 18-inch aluminum wheels and tires. And the exterior is more of the mold and color, I will just say less replacement cost, which is important to our fleet customers. It's important to the work truck drivers, whether they're fleet or retail customers. And so the truck has been designed to have I'll say less bling, but still same capability.
And what's the price on that? Have you guys announced that?
We have not announced the price of the truck that's coming in the first, the spring of 2023. That's reserved for our fleet customers. Mm-hmm. But we do have work trucks that will start at $39,995. Those are lower range vehicles. So we're going to have different range options. So as you kind of look at what we've revealed so far, you can kind of start to piece together the fact that the truck has a flexible architecture that's capable of a wide variety of range. It'll have a wide variety of payload and towing capability, and it'll have a wide variety of options to suit basically any customer's needs. When we go over to the RST, what changes is animation, lighting, walk-up lighting, that cross-car light that's on the front of the RST. The interior has a sliding cup holder with a console that's more refined. The materials that you touch and feel are more refined. The exterior materials are higher gloss. And just, giving that extra incentive to a customer who wants an RST appearance. And we want to meet their, vision of what an RST is and what we've designed as an RST in the past. Now, of course, this truck is a departure of the designs of the past, but it still has the same feeling that you're buying a vehicle that's got more opportunity for some design aesthetics inside of it. And of course, our RST comes with our midgate, and the work truck does not.
Yeah, and going back to do they both versions get four-wheel steering? And talk about that a little bit, because I think that could be a game changer in terms of bringing more people into the full-size pickup segment.
Yes, I drive a full-size pickup truck, but I know the pain of turning into a parking lot or into a parking spot, and the two-turn that everybody kind of does to try to get in there. Or if you've gotten really good, you can do it in one, but everybody in the passenger seat kind of does that like eek thing. I think that, so first of all, rear steer is on the RST for the first year. It is not on the work truck. And the steering radius that we have on the work truck is very good still. And that's because of the wheelbase that we've designed and some of the chassis that we've designed into the vehicle. Work truck, the 20,000 pound towing truck will have rear steer because we think that trailering dynamics are very important. So rear steer doesn't just help you with, parking lot maneuvers and lower speed maneuvers. It also helps stability at highway speeds with trailering. So you'll see rear steer offered where we want it to be from a trailering perspective, and then also for a customer option on the RST retail model.
Joann.
So I have a dumb question. Are you still going to sell a gas-powered Silverado?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Silverado ICE vehicles, there's a very large market for a Silverado. And as we just showed, I think a month ago, there's new designs and new content, Trail Boss coming for the Silverado, and those will continue. As we move forward in the EV space and adoption increases, GM's vision is to have EV future, but for right now, ICE vehicles are definitely here to stay.
Nichole, on the inside of this vehicle, you have a big honking screen, and there are a lot of functions that you can perform through the screen. What did you decide would be in the screen, and what do you still have buttons and knobs for?
Yeah, virtualization is almost a polarizing conversation with any customer that you have, that you talk to. So we've done what I think is a good mix. Personally, as a customer, I've researched a lot of our customer feedback. We've talked to folks both across fleet when they have gloves on their hands and things like that, as well as retail. And we've got, I think, a really good mix of virtualization and also a different viewpoint on how to use virtualization. So we keep HVAC controls as switches. We've got some chassis switches on the side of the steering wheel that are still physical switches. And then our volume control for the radio is still physical. When we move into virtualization, there's a persistent box that sits on the screen that doesn't go away when you're sliding across different screens and in different menus. And those persistent buttons are the ones that are also, I'll just say, traditionally have been physical buttons. So an auto headlamp switch and things like that. So they're persistent. They stay there. You'll know where to find them. They're just on the screen instead of being physical in the vehicle. It really allows us to have a very sleek and simplified IP. The interior is very, I'll just say, simplistic and not too busy for you to have to find those switches. And then the last thing that we have on the infotainment screen is on the top, a personalized button area where you can take apps from the screen. Instead of sliding across to find different apps that you use frequently, you can personalize your settings, take those apps, drop them at the top above that blue bar in the picture you see there. And then anything that you constantly use or use more frequently is available for you to touch and get to quickly. And then, of course, the cluster is personalizable as well. This is all about bringing as much technology as we can into the vehicle, personalizing it for that driver's experience, letting you choose what you use and put it in front of you so that it's easy for you to get to.
Joann, Gary, any more last burning questions on the Silverado EV?
I had one about charging. I was very intrigued yesterday. GM announced this mobile generator business powered by hydrogen fuel cells. And the piece of it that I found really interesting was that you could turn these into fast charging stations and drop them anywhere, whether it's at your corner gas station that doesn't want to spend the money to put in a full EV charger, or at a trailhead somewhere, for people who are going to take their truck off road. I'm really curious about that idea of, trying to find a way to charge these things wherever you are, as opposed to, just along the highway somewhere and you have to search and find it somewhere.
Well, from an EV perspective, the reality is that the industry needs to grow and the infrastructure needs to grow with it. So it shouldn't be any surprise to anyone that General Motors is committed to finding every opportunity we can for our customers to not make the lack of a charge station or the being in a remote area a reason for not purchasing an EV. So let's develop technology where people can charge their vehicle with standalone systems like this. I think it's an amazing opportunity. I think it's so much fun to work at General Motors because I could be working on an EV vehicle one day and that or something even else in the future that we can't even imagine right now next year. And my engineering skills can go to work in any of those spaces to go develop a product. So it makes sense. I'm sure that's not the end of things that are going to come from GM in terms of trying to ease any anxiety that people might have to move to the EV space. We're very committed to an electrified future, and you're going to see things like this so that the industry and the world can understand that we're here. This isn't just a fad. We're absolutely going to continue to develop it, and we're going to make it easy for our customers to bring themselves into the electrified market.
Cool.
Nichole, you've gotten feedback from fleets and customers and all that. Have any of them actually had a chance to drive any of the vehicles that you've built so far? I mean, I know they're not for sale yet, but have you gotten any real world feedback on how they drive?
We have only a few vehicles that we physically have built to test right now. So we haven't had anyone physically in the vehicles yet driving around with us. That being said, we have talked to them. We've shown them a lot of images, and we've been able to work with them and collaborate on things that they might have as concerns and also things that they think are really great. And so it's been giving us a lot of opportunities to improve our design, or at least make sure that the design that we have is meeting their needs, both from a retail and a fleet perspective. So we look forward to being able to bring folks into our vehicles when they're ready. And I think everyone is going to just, walk out and say that it's a game changer.
So I want to ask you a question that goes in the opposite direction from what Joann was asking. So instead of charging, you guys have this offboarding capability of 10.2 kilowatts. What do you see that doing for people?
Oh, I mean, I will give you what I see myself doing. 10.2 kilowatts is a lot of power to be able to offboard. So campsites, campers with refrigerators, not having to be hooked into a campgrounds itself and being able to go explore the world or the country as you desire, I think is an awesome opportunity, at least in my head. The other thing is job sites and being able to power a job site and use it. The other thing that we heard of the other day was things like search and rescue. I mean, it would be great that the search and rescue equipment can run on the truck that goes out to the beach that's doing, sonar, scuba, everything like that. So there are so many possibilities. I don't know that I can list them all for you. I think it's great to have the opportunity to be able to power your home and not have to have a gas generator there. You can purchase the vehicle and do things like that with it. And so anything that you can imagine. I'm a soccer mom, field hockey mom. The rain was torrential downpour a couple days ago in Florida, and I could have imagined having that so that the kids' boots and shoes were all dried. And those boot heaters take quite a bit of draw in terms of current and load to be able to run. So there are simple things that are going to make people's lives so much easier. And then there are things that are going to compound themselves with a fleet customer or a small business owner that is really going to provide a great opportunity to offboard that power. And then, of course, on the retail side, we can tailgate at some U of M football games or or power our home.
Oh, Blue.
That in, sorry.
Nichole, we've asked you a bunch of questions. Are we missing anything here? Is there something special you'd like to talk about the truck?
I guess I'll just say, and I think I mentioned this just a little bit earlier, but being able to reimagine this pickup truck from the ground up has really offered some really amazing opportunities for our engineers and designers. And to be able to use Factory Zero from a flexibility perspective down in Detroit, the manufacturing prowess that we have is really a great opportunity for us to show that we can build these vehicles at scale with quality. And we're very proud of the fact that the pickup truck itself is the same capability that the Silverado ICE vehicle is, but with more. And what that more really means is taking advantage and using an EV architecture for what it can be used for. I mean, let's face it, we could have chosen to just do battery packs under our body-on-frame Silverado and come out to market, quite frankly, probably a little bit faster. But we didn't make that choice because we felt like we wanted people to be able to see that the EV Silverado is different. It's not the same truck that's driving around on the roads today. And we're going to develop it for great aerodynamic performance, have a really great looking design that has a sculpted form to it that helps us enable our 400 miles of range. And I just want to say that I hope everyone really appreciates all of the work that goes into it and the fact that it's just so capable and just a winning product.
Real good. With that, we're going to wrap this segment up. Nichole Kraatz, thanks so much for coming on the show. Fascinating truck. There's so much detail in it. I know anybody who's interested can find even more detail at the Chevrolet website. And I, for one, cannot wait to drive this thing. That's going to be the proof in the pudding, as we say.
You and I will be driving together. No one else will be able to drive but you and I. Just
That's
because I used to listen to you all the time on the radio. So thank you for having me on. It was an absolute pleasure. And I'm happy to come back anytime.
You're on. We'll have you back for sure.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Great. We're going to take a quick break now. We'll be back to talk about more of the news going on in the automotive industry. Now we're back. Yeah, I think we can do another show on this, as they roll out more of the models. I'm fascinated. Nichole referred to these math models, digital tools, and the like. I think that's been a real key, what they call software in the loop, hardware in the loop, and the like. There's probably a whole show in that of how they were able to get this truck developed in, for them, certainly record time.
Hey, can you remind me what is the range on the Ford F-150 Lightning?
300 miles.
Okay. All right. So this is considerably more.
Considerably more. Now, as she said, they're going to have a lower price version with less range. Mm-hmm. And I think the base price of the Lightning is $40,000.
Right.
So who knows? Maybe their $40,000 version is going to be more like the range of the Lightning. But as she pointed out, theirs is a total clean sheet design. I'm expecting this thing to be more efficient than the Lightning, which I think is going to be a good truck, but it's just an electrified version of the existing F-150.
Isn't the WT about $40,000? The work truck?
No, I think that one was going to be more. Yeah, they haven't said what, but.
Right. They haven't said that. Now, they said that there is going to be a $39,995, let's call it $40,000 version, but it's not going to have the 400-mile range.
Damn batteries.
And I don't know if we'll ever know the fleet price, right? Because that's, they buy them in bulk probably. And, but But I think she did say individuals can buy the work truck.
Can buy
retail.
that truck. Yeah, you may not get the fleet price.
Yeah, that would be nice. I think I was so fascinated, though, that I really think like where EVs are going to take off is really with commercial customers, right?
Absolutely.
So it's everything from pickup trucks to delivery vans to buses, and some lighter duty trucks that deliver around, like the Pepsi truck or something, right?
Right.
And I think that's where we're really going to start to see inroads. We'll start to move the needle, and we should, because those are the vehicles creating most of the carbon emissions, right? But then when retail normal customers say, "Ooh, maybe that is a pretty good thing. I could get one of them for myself." I just think it's fascinating, and I think it's the only way that EVs actually become commonplace.
Yeah, totally agree.
Well, so I basically wonder, though. I mean, first of all, let's not discount Tesla. I mean, they sold nearly 1 million vehicles last year, so that's globally, that's still non-trivial. So a lot of vehicles out there, a lot of people want to buy them. But the thing that I basically wonder about, whether it's trucks or other types of passenger vehicles, is the willingness of consumers to buy vehicles that are not coming from General Motors or Ford or the company formerly known as Chrysler. It just strikes me that a vehicle nowadays is nearly 50 grand, right? And that's average transaction price sort of thing. And isn't there a considerable risk that some of these new startup companies may not make it? And what's the likelihood you're going to be stuck with a brand whatever vehicle and nobody to fix it? We talked about on last week's show, we were talking about the Tesla experience in terms of servicing and so on. But they've got one. But what if brand X company is gone? What happens to your investment there? And so Morning Consult research organization came out with some numbers I saw today, which basically asked people their willingness to buy from a new manufacturer versus an existing manufacturer or traditional manufacturer. And only 25% basically said that they would buy from a new manufacturer. So I just wonder about, the opportunities for these new companies. Do they exist? What do you guys think?
Go ahead, Joann.
Well, I'm thinking back to the early days of Tesla. I don't know about you, but I'm guessing you were as skeptical as I was that they would make it, right? And as you know, they haven't always been ideal at servicing their customers' cars, but nonetheless, they did make it, and they have made it. And so, history is littered with all these startup car makers that failed in the past. And yet the EV movement in particular has opened the door and given new hope to all these new companies that are hoping to be the next Tesla. So maybe 2 or 3 of them make it. I don't know. But if you think about, if you're the consumer, they advise you, don't buy the car in the first year of production because there's always, problems that need to be worked out. You should wait a year. Imagine, as you say, somebody buying from a company that's never built a car before. On the other hand, there's certain early adopters that like technology. They don't see this necessarily as a vehicle. They see it as tech. And I think there will be plenty of people that want to buy a Rivian or a Lucid Air, who have the money to do so. I will note one thing that was really interesting. If I could just add one more point. Yesterday, Consumer Reports talked about I guess it was today, about these driver monitoring systems that go along with assisted driving. And it was so interesting that they said the only 2 that are getting it right are GM and Ford. And I thought, well, the home team is getting some kudos there for a change. Usually people discount them for being, old hat.
Yeah. I think people went with Tesla, starting a decade ago because it offered something totally new. a brand new driving experience superior to what was out there. And then it had other cool things like over-the-air updates that nobody else has done. But Tesla set that bar. Now all the other startups coming out, they got to top Tesla because Tesla's already done that kind of stuff. And the other traditional automakers are catching up to it too. So I think you named the two startups that are probably going to make it, Rivian and Lucid. You know, I've driven the Lucid Air. Wow. I mean, it does top Tesla in a number of ways, especially the interior design, use of materials and things like that. Although all Lucid's done is matched what other luxury makers have done. But the driving experience with 1,100 horsepower in the Launch Edition is truly a spectacular driving experience.
As long as you don't mind software problems.
and you should mention, John, that the one you drove was what was $175,000.
Yeah,
so
right, yeah,
you know.
right.
Well, the one I drove was a prototype, that was pre-production. Had a lot of software issues, door handles, other things, maps that weren't working. You know, hopefully they'll get that straightened out. But a lot could go wrong in an electric car too.
That's right. And Rivian is essentially the first out with an electric truck. So they've got that, hopefully for them, first mover advantage. But the others, they're going to have a hard time of it, I think.
So, I mean, Joann, you were saying commercial applications are the ones that are likely to be the most accepting of this technology. And so General Motors has set up BrightDrop, which, Walmart's going with, FedEx is going with. Rivian has the deal with Amazon, whereby, Amazon vehicles will be built by Rivian. But I just wonder about some of these other startup companies that are out there. Arrival, for example. I mean, what was it? Electric Last Mile Systems, Elms. We had Jim Taylor on the show a few months back. Is it a situation where there's going to be enough for everyone to get a small piece of it, or do you think that there will be a bias towards the General Motors backed BrightDrop because you really want reliability and certainty?
Well, if you heard the guy from FedEx, the president of FedEx Express, talking about BrightDrop right around CES. I mean, that guy was the biggest pitch man that GM has ever seen. And I swear, I even said to GM, my God, did you pay him to say these things? I mean, he just said, I think this is true. These guys are making these multi-million, even billion-dollar decisions for their businesses, and they have some very serious carbon goals to meet as well. They're not messing around. They want someone that can deliver. And I believe that the bias will be toward GM. Ford Pro, their commercial division, I think is big and is going to be, also getting a lot of this business. I actually think, as reporters used to discount the fleet commercial business, as not being sexy. But I tell you what, that's where it's at right now. And these car makers that are taking advantage of it are going to do very, very well. And it's going to lead the whole industry to go electric, in my view.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Joann. And this is where I do agree that the bias is going to be towards the traditionals. Why? They got dealers everywhere. If you got a commercial fleet, uptime is what it's all about. Mm-hmm. And, okay, over-the-air updates are great. Mobile service centers, vans that can go out and repair things, that's great. But I keep saying, what if it's pouring outside? What if it's 20 below? What if the van or the truck has got to go up on a hoist? Those mobile, service centers don't work in those situations. And over-the-air is great if anything is a software-related problem. But if it's hardware, you got to put it in the service center and put it up on a hoist and fix it. And brands like Ford, Chevrolet, and Ram have got all the distribution and service centers to make that happen. And that's where I think they have a massive advantage in this commercial electrification.
Okay, so So everything I learned, or everything I know, I learned from Axios. So I'm taking this from Axios. This is from one of Joann's colleagues.
Joann.
It's a very good publication, but I think I know what you're going to say, and I didn't write that story.
Right. So Carlos Ghosn, former head of the Renault, Nissan, Mitsubishi, added several more companies alliance, who is now in Lebanon. He left Japan.
In a suitcase.
Escaped from Japan, yeah. So I'm taking this from this Axios story. Ghosn predicts that traditional automakers like Nissan, GM, and Ford won't be able to keep up with startups which, quote, don't have rigidity of mind. In close quote, he acknowledges that GM and Ford in particular have made progress with the introduction of electric pickups like the Chevrolet Silverado and Ford F-150 Lightning. That's not so true, Joann. You ought to talk to them about that. But he says they will continue to shrink. Quoting Ghosn again, a lot of companies are going to be left behind. If you don't go 100% electric, you're not going to be part of this industry anymore. So Carlos Ghosn seems to me, from my reading of this, saying it's the startups that are going to be the ones that are going to be really taking share, and the big ones are going to shrink. So who's right, you two or him?
Well, I think he's a big fan of Tesla. And I think that, he sees them in a different category as GM and Ford. I don't know that he's necessarily saying companies like Lordstown Motors or some of these other, small startups. There's so many of them, I can't keep track of them all, are going to, pull the rug out underneath GM and Ford. Nissan was among the first with the Nissan Leaf. And as I recall, you guys correct me, I think he was a little bit slow to say, yes, the Leaf is wonderful. And then all of a sudden he changed his mind and said, everybody needs to be driving electric. I don't know what caused it to. I think it might have been the emergence of Tesla. And that was a long time ago. So I don't know. It's easy for him to sit on the sidelines and pontificate right now. Right. What do you think, John?
Yeah, if you go back far enough, Ghosn kind of poo-pooed electric cars and put all his faith in continuously variable transmissions, CVTs. That was going to be his solution because, they made the ICE more efficient. And then they came out with the Leaf and they sat on their hands. They didn't do anything else. They did the Leaf and called it a day. And that's when he was still running the company, too, by the way.
Right.
Now, I'll give him the benefit of 20/20 hindsight. And I tend to agree with him that you better be ready to go all in as a traditional automaker. Now, it depends what markets you're talking about. If it's Europe, the US, and China, you bet you better be all in. And I mean, serious, clean sheet designs like Nichole Kraatz was talking about with the Silverado, not gutting an existing vehicle and stuffing it full of batteries. You better be ready to do that. But, Toyota's got a pretty good argument, too, that in much of Southeast Asia, Africa, Latin America, I mean, the EV revolution is a long way away in those markets. They just don't have the grid that would support it.
All right, so let me bring in Carlos Ghosn's former lieutenant, Carlos Tavares, who is now running Stellantis, who said in an interview this week that basically this whole push towards electrification in the European Union, okay, so we've got to put that in there, basically is a political choice, not an industry-driven choice, okay? And I thought that was rather interesting since the fact that...
but Gary, I've got to interject here. You could say the same thing about seatbelts and catalytic converters. The industry never pushed for those. Of course it's a political choice. When a business will not do things that are good for society, i.e. eliminate emissions and traffic fatalities, of course the politicians or the regulators have got to step in.
So what I thought to be interesting about that is Abarth will be all electric in 24, DS in 24, Maserati in 25, Lancia in 26, Alfa in 27, Opel in 28, Chrysler in 28, Fiat in 2030, and Peugeot in 30 as well. So isn't this a little confusing? I mean, he seems to be talking one side and the other. His business is going all electric, but this is not a good thing.
he doesn't want to be one of those companies left behind, like Carlos Ghosn was talking about. I mean, it's a fact of life. It's happening. And, I whether they like it or not, it's going to happen. The consumer is still trying to figure out their comfort with all of this. So I think that in this case, the politicians and then the car makers are ahead of where the consumer is. And I think that is the big worry of CEOs. It's like, oh, what's going to happen to my profits? But I predict it's just going to be a very messy decade as this transition happens. But I do believe it's already underway.
Yeah, look, I used to be skeptical as to whether the public would catch on to EVs in the time frame that the advocates would like to see it happen. And finally, what changed my mind is I didn't anticipate how many governments around the world were going to ban sales of brand new internal combustion engine vehicles, starting with Norway in 2025. There's a whole bunch of them in 2030, especially in Europe. Globally, there's even that much more by 2035. So wake up and smell the coffee. This is not going away. Also, the second thing I underestimated was how generous governments would shovel out incentives for people to buy them and to build an EV infrastructure. So you put those two things together, lots of money on the table for the consumer and a ban on IC engines, and it's pretty obvious where this is all going. And I think that's why Ghosn said what he said. And it's curious to hear people like Tavares, and even BMW has been very dismissive of EVs, even though they're coming out with them. But you got to wake up and face the reality of what's going to happen in a few years.
So speaking of ICE vehicles, this will be our last topic. We'll wrap it up after this. So we're all worried about inflation now, or we ought to be concerned about inflation now, or I think most of us aren't worried about it. One of the top drivers of inflation in 2021 was the price of fuel. Okay. Gasoline costs went up 50% last year. The analyst at Gas Buddy predicts that gasoline may hit $4 per gallon before the year is out. Is this going to be a driver towards more electric vehicles, or is this going to be something that will be taken with a shrug, or will this just annihilate sales of conventional pickup trucks as gas spikes tend to do?
Go ahead, Joann.
I think that it will help propel the shift to EVs, because I think people will start to do the math and figure out, what's my total cost of ownership. My concern is maybe less about about gas prices and more about vehicle prices. Like I think that cars and trucks are just getting out of range for a lot of people. And, the used market right now, used prices are very high too. And I just think transportation is becoming a much bigger item budget wise for certain families. Right. And I think that for any family, really. And I do worry about inflation and its effect on automobiles. And, all this technology they're putting in, whether it's electric vehicle, batteries, whether it's autonomous or assisted driving, ADAS features, or connectivity, all this stuff costs a lot of money. And it's just driving up the price. And that's why I love the Ford Maverick so much. I think you can get a decent truck for an affordable price. I mean, yeah, if you want a lot of things in it, it goes up quickly. But still, that's my thought on inflation. Sorry, more than just gas.
I think you got the final word in there, Joann. I could not have said it better myself. I completely agree with that. And so with that, we ought to wrap it up. Joann, thanks so much for coming on the show. And we'll have you back on again in the future.
Great. Thanks. Good to see you guys.
Thanks,
Good deal. And Gary, let's do it again next week.
Okay, let's do that.
And I want to thank everybody for having tuned in.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday afternoons. Get your daily fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv.